Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves, just outside Louisville, Kentucky, and back home in Maryland. John Webster, my longtime friend, esteemed colleague, and good all-around Christian man.
Hey Gary, thanks for the beautiful introduction. I don't know if I can live up to all of that, but thank you very much. Uh,
All we can do is try every day, man. Every minute of every day. Be the best we can.
hey, another great week in sports, man. A lot of stuff is happening that we're going to talk about today. I'm excited about it, and I'm ready to jump in here with both feet and both hands and get going. But Gary, you know what we got to do before we do it.
Yeah, we got to give props to our traffic cop, Mr. John Pitt.
Hey, Big John, how you doing, man?
I'm excited, man. It's Dallas week in the DMV. Let's go. Sunday at 1. Can't wait.
Oh, really? The Cowboys play Washington this week? Oh, I didn't know.
See, hey, John, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, you didn't care, and for that matter, neither did I. But here we are, and let's see. Now, I remember back when you were going through the schedule, and you must have picked out at least 5 losses for the Washington football team. But here they are. They're 2 games behind the Cowboys entering December, and a more important game than we might have expected at the beginning of October. That says a lot about what Washington is doing. It might say a little bit about what Dallas isn't doing here in recent weeks. But hey, they've had time off. They'll be rested by the time they come to FedEx Field. And, who knows what's going to happen. Do I think a game like this could decide the decision? The division? I don't know. But it will be indicative of which team is headed in the right direction, I think, because Dallas really can't afford another loss right now. Washington could probably take a loss, but they don't want to slow their momentum. And I mean, they're the hottest team in the NFC right now. What do you think, John?
It's going to be an interesting game. I mean, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said Washington was going to end up 4-13. I've been proven terribly wrong because they're sitting at 6-6 right now. The remaining games are against Dallas twice, Philadelphia twice, and the Giants. Revere has done what he has done in the past. He's a second half type of coach. He gets them going after November, and they play really well when it gets cold. So my hat's off to them, Gary. I think they're playing really well. The one thing I did say, I think you remember, Taylor Heineke, I'm a fan of. I like Taylor Heineke. I'm not saying that he is, but he reminds you of another number 4 that played many years ago. He's a gunslinger, and he just throws it all over the place. He makes some bad throws, some bad decisions, but he comes right back and forgets about it really quick. So it's going to be interesting. Dallas is supposed to be as healthy this Sunday as they've been in the last month. Even though Ezekiel Elliott still has a bad knee, I think they're going to have to play Pollard more. But make no mistake about it, Washington is the hottest team in the NFC. They're putting together wins. They're doing it with defense, a strong running game. We'll see what happens. Dallas it's been a long time since a Dallas-Washington game had meaning. And this is going to have some meaning. It's going to be a lot of blue in that stadium, though, Gary, because, Washington fans still aren't really filling up that stadium right now. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, even though the Washington football team hasn't given fans much to cheer about in recent years, let me rephrase that. Even if they had given fans something to cheer about in recent years, it probably would still be predominantly blue and FedEx on Sunday, just because there are so many more people like our producer John Pitt, who are from the area, but for some reason root for the enemy. That's a issue between them and God, I guess. But I mean, it's just weird. Like, I think we had a conversation once, John, about how I think I covered a game down in Dallas, and there was a Walmart across the street from AT&T Stadium. And I walked in the front door and there was nothing but Washington paraphernalia. I mean, you know how, like, when you walk in and you get greeted and everything, there was this huge section of burgundy and gold that I never would have expected to see literally across the street from the stadium. I mean, it was like the complete opposite of what happens in DC or DC area, where you walk into a store and see all this Dallas paraphernalia and such. I can't even, that's one of those things where I guess maybe you live in an area, you're so opposed to the hometown team that you root for their sworn enemy or rival, whatever. But, that's the way FedEx is going to be on Sunday. It'll probably be more blue. There are going to be a lot of absences, no matter who wins on Sunday. Going to be a lot of absences at work on Monday. And hopefully there won't be any violence.
Well, I would hope so too, Gary. The only violence that needs to happen are those collisions on the field when Gibson's running up the middle on Dow's for a 20 or 25-yard gain, and he's knocking over, what's the lineman's name on Dallas? Lawrence, knocking him over. And then the only other violence that you'll have is when Diggs is going for another interception, and it's really a running play, and he gets pancaked. So that's the only violence that I see, Gary. I mean, what do you think, Pitt? I know you normally don't talk on the show, but what do you think, John Pitt? At least say something. Will Dallas win this game, John?
I think we do, and I think we're healthy enough this week, finally, that we take care of business.
Okay. All right. Well, it won't.
I can't argue with them about that because, I mean, even though the schedule on Thanksgiving week is always their enemy because you got to play twice, play twice that week. They did get a little bit of a break in having another week before they played another Thursday night game, and now they'll have at least 8-9 days off before they travel to Washington. And, after a stretch like that, it really hopefully it does benefit, them health wise or whatever. Because, when Washington beats Dallas, we want them to be at their, peak physical condition and everything. So there won't be any excuses on Monday or people complaining about, oh, that was a bad beat or something like that. And, with gambling and stuff, just the usual stuff we hear.
Well, let me tell you something. John Pitt doesn't complain. John Pitt, if they lose, he won't say one word. Literally.
That's true. That's true. He's very level-headed and everything. I wish there were more John Pitts in the world.
You can, after the game, I would say to John, man, what happened? And he will just walk away and not even say anything. So he's not going to say anything. He's just not going to say anything. So I'll write him a note. Or maybe I'll send him an email. Maybe I'll send him a text message. Maybe I'll get a response that way. We'll see. We'll see. Hey,
yeah.
But look. Let me before we move on, Gary, and I'm going to give the wheel right back to you. I'm going to give the wheel right back to you. But two things I think we got to talk about. One, New England Patriots, and two, Baltimore Ravens. Do you go for two?
No. Look, knowing how Harbaugh is, it didn't surprise me that it went for two. And I remember thinking before they got the ball that it's like if they can get a touchdown, they'll probably go for two. But you got Justin Tucker sitting there marinating on the sidelines. And look, I know everybody's going through the Monday morning or now in our case, Wednesday evening quarterback about this. But if you got the best kicker in NFL history sitting on the sidelines with a, with an extra point, they could send it to overtime, and given the momentum and given Pittsburgh's defense at that point, I'd say you take your chances in overtime, because, and even if you lose, again, it's everything is kind of a crapshoot at that point. But you just want to give your offense, give your team maybe a reprieve. Again, if that play works, then we're not having this discussion, obviously. But I think when you're in that situation, I think you kick the extra point and try to go for overtime. Because again, no matter how much momentum you gain by scoring that touchdown, you go for the sure thing and then take your chances in OT.
Well, you bring up some good points. I felt the way you felt until I started. I listened to a few more things on Monday. Sunday, I was like, kick the extra point. But then I started listening and realizing Marlon Humphrey was going to be out. That was another one of their defensive players. That's their best defensive player. Harbaugh said he had no more cornerbacks. He was done. They're decimated anyway with injuries. So, now I see why he did it. He didn't have enough on defense, and he just wanted to get out of there. I will also say this. If Mark Andrews is not running sideways and he continues to run towards the pylon, he gets the pass. It's a 2-point conversion and they win. And another thing that he didn't do, and I'm not a football player, but what I think he could have done is taken his hand and flipped the ball a little bit back to him and kept running. And he ran right into the ball, ran right into the end zone, right into the pylon, and it's all over. But it's like you say, Gary, we're not talking about this if they score. But the one thing that I want to say that I've said early in the year, John Harbaugh should be considered for Coach of the Year. And I'm going to tell you why. The injuries that they have on defense, they're down to their 15th string running back now. Somebody as old as me and you playing running back now because they don't have anybody. There's a lot of games they should have lost, and you're looking at this brutal schedule coming down the final weeks with Green Bay, with the Rams, with Cleveland. I can't even think of the other games they got. It's a rough schedule. Cincinnati, it's a rough schedule, and they're 8-4 right now. Honestly, Gary, I thought with everything that happened even before the season, 9-8, 10-7. I mean, they've done a miraculous job as a team. I think right now one of the problems that they have is Lamar Jackson is trying to do too much because they just don't have enough. So some of the mistakes they're having are coming from him trying to be too much of an effort, and they don't have it. I mean, look at the running back. Do you even know the name of the running back that starts for them right now? I know I don't.
No, but whatever the bus stop is outside Baltimore Stadium, that's where you probably look for the next running back this coming Sunday. I mean, that's what injuries have done to them. Where basically you are picking guys off the street, and and I mean it sounds like a joke, but seriously, I think they have gotten to the point with all the injuries that they're calling guys up to say, hey, what are you doing? Can you be here on Sunday?
Yeah.
That's just how it is with them. They have, to their credit, they have been able to get something out of these emergency signees. And maybe that's where Harbaugh does deserve some mention as, real serious considerations, Coach of the Year. But who I think really should win it?
Who's
Bill
that?
Belichick. Bill Belichick.
And that's a nice segue into what we really need to talk about. Foxborough, Massachusetts, New England. Oh, my goodness. Oh, Gary.
We only have a minute, John, so we better make it quick.
Okay, then I'll just say, I don't want to talk too much about them. I don't want you or Pitt to talk too much about them because you're going to jinx them. I just want to keep being under the radar. I just want to keep winning games.
John, they are on the radar.
Huh?
John, they are on the radar. They are in the center of the radar. They've got, look, they've got a target on their backs now. And who would have expected that at the beginning of the year?
I don't want that, Gary. I like when everybody say they suck. And I like it when they say they're terrible and Bill Belichick needs to retire. That's great. But now with everybody looking at him, I'm worried now. I'm worried. I mean, but I tell you something, I enjoyed that game Monday night. It's outdoors, it's freezing cold, it's snowing, and it's the wind. Oh my goodness, that was beautiful, man. It was beautiful. I'm not going to go sit in it by no stretch of the imagination, but I enjoyed watching.
Yeah. Well, speaking of weather and going to the opposite extreme and going down a level in football, let's talk about the college football playoffs. Both of them are going to be played hopefully in warm weather climates, but we've got Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Cincinnati. We could sit here and try to debate whether they got it right or not. It doesn't matter. It's been chosen, but I'm glad to see Cincinnati in there. Not just because they're from they're only an hour and a half up the road, but because you've got the best teams playing for the championship. If Oklahoma had won last Saturday, I don't know if Cincinnati's in, but Oklahoma State took care of business, and again, the rest is history, and I think we do have the best four teams there. Right now, I can't handicap this field. I can't really pick a winner because 3 weeks from now, you just don't know what's going to happen. If that game, if the playoffs started this weekend, I would probably say Cincinnati has more momentum going in against Alabama because it's hard. It's hard for Alabama to duplicate that kind of effort in that kind of game from week to week. After escaping Auburn, they played their best game of the year against Georgia. They played pretty much the perfect game. Georgia's got a lot of work to do in 3 weeks. Really, I think most of it is going to be upstairs with them too, because when you get beat like that, it stays in your head. In 3 weeks of practice, you got to figure out a lot of things, because chances are they're going to meet again in mid-January for the title. And maybe I am handicapping with that, but I think if you're Georgia, if you can get past Michigan, you got to figure out how to slay the monster a month from now.
Well, you said a mouthful, Gary, and I would agree with you. The four teams that are in there, I agree with them. You won't hear me try to put the team in green and South Bend in this. They should not be in it. These are the four teams. I think Michigan gets Georgia. I think that happens. Alabama, Cincinnati. That's a real hard mountain to climb for Cincinnati. That's going to be rough. I would love to see that happen. I just don't think it will. So I think it's Alabama and Coach Kaki going for a national championship. I'll give you one guess who I'm rooting for, Gary. So,
yeah. The thing about Michigan, I wonder. Okay, well, first of all, for Georgia's got to really figure out their defense now. The one thing that Alabama showed everybody about Georgia is that, as good as that record looked, that was the best offense they faced all season, and they just absolutely manhandled them. Now you face Michigan, which is a power team, which can put points on the board. I mean, they destroyed Iowa after destroying Ohio State. Georgia's got to come up with something defensively. I think Kirby Smart, I think that team can come up with something, but it's like that onslaught, Alabama, then Michigan, and Michigan, like I said, they are a very physical team. Georgia's got to be, they've just got to figure out a way to stop them. Michigan, I think, is playing with house money at this point.
You know what Georgia reminds me of, Gary? Reminds me of a boxer who has been knocking everybody out and everybody is worried about him, scared to death of him. And then they get knocked out and they're never the same again. And I think this is what's going to happen to Georgia. Georgia's been powerful the whole year. Nobody could do anything to them. They're an immovable object. And Alabama not only moved them out the way, but slapped them around and pushed them underneath the stadium. And
yep. They took their food from them. They took their cookies from them. I mean, they you can come up with all kinds of metaphors for that. But like you said, Georgia had been the bully all year, and then they run up against Buster Douglas.
Yeah, and I just don't know if they can bounce back. I just don't know. Oh. And you see, the thing is, the way Georgia plays football is the same way the same way Michigan plays football. It's slobber knocker football, punch you in the face, give you a bloody nose, and we'll see what happens. That's what Michigan did to Ohio State. They didn't spread out or do anything. They just ran straight at them all day long and bludgeoned them. That's what they did. And that's what they're going to do. That's what they also did against Iowa. It wasn't anything really fancy. They had a trick play that scored, but nothing really fancy. And that's what Michigan's going to do against Georgia. They're going to run straight at them. They're going to come at them. The better man wins. And right now, I think Georgia may be a little punch drunk after what happened to them last Saturday. They may be a little punch drunk.
Yeah, it's for Georgia, again, it's like, what happens up here? How do you get past that and say, okay, we've got a clean slate? But again, if you've been, like, say, finessing teams all year, which I'm not going to say that they have, because that defense had been formidable. Mm-hmm. You could, again, beating Clemson in, what was that, 10-3 or something like that, at the beginning of the year. I know it wasn't the same Clemson offense that they faced, but 3 points is 3 points. And I'd seen a couple of other games where I'm just thinking, man, it is really hard to move the ball on them. I mean, they shut down some pretty good offenses, but again, the cream rose to the top in that SEC title game, and mm-hmm. now I think the cream's going to rise to the top, with Michigan. Sorry for Georgia, but you're right. I do think it's it's a khaki versus Nick for the title, and maybe that's the way it probably should be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, but I think Michigan gets them, and I also think that Alabama will beat Cincinnati.
Yeah. Before, we'll come back to this in closing because I want to get a Heisman Trophy prediction out of you. But let's talk about NCAA basketball. All right, we have a new number one in Purdue. Since we last talked, Mark Turgeon has stepped down as coach at Maryland. That was a surprise. That is probably still the story du jour, back home. And it really, really shocked me. Was this shocking to you, or was this something that you could see coming?
Yeah, that is the story right now. I think that Maryland, with Mark Turgeon stepping down, that was a real big surprise. They're going to struggle this year, Gary. They're missing a lot of pieces. They've had I think they already have one kid in the transfer portal. So it was a surprise to see Coach Turgeon leave. I think he's a really, really good guy. I think he's a really, really good coach, but I also think he is a mid-major coach. Being in the Big Ten or ACC or SEC, I don't think that's Mark Turgeon. And I know that sounds like I'm knocking him, and that's really not what I'm trying to do, but that ends up sounding what I'm doing. But I just think he is a Wichita State maybe at Texas A&M. That's the kind of coach that he is, and Texas A&M is now in the SEC, but he's just the kind of coach that he can get that team to play at a certain level, and he can come up with a big upset. That's the kind of guy I think he is. I don't see him as being the guy that wants to deal with this on a week in, week out basis where I'm in the Big Ten and I got to face Michigan, then I got to face Michigan State. Now all of a sudden it's Purdue because Purdue's the best team in the country. It's a rough situation. It's just rough.
Yeah. I watched them against Louisville, and I saw a team that just looked kind of lost out there physically. Like the team that I saw in the tournament last spring when they beat UConn. Of course, they lost in the second round. But I thought that was a team that was kind of on the way up. And I just saw a team, a couple of weeks ago that just really, really looked lost out there. And when I look at the disparity on the offensive glass against Louisville, 17-2, I mean, 2 offensive rebounds. That's kind of concerning to me because Louisville didn't even shoot that well. Neither one of them shot that well. But again, they had a lot of second chance points. They had a lot of opportunities, and Maryland just seemed disinterested. Now, obviously, the Virginia Tech loss was kind of the tipping point, I think, for a lot of fans, where Turgeon got booed. The stories that I've seen is that was kind of in discussion before that loss. But there's a point where I think Turgeon came back from the Bahamas and just really wondered, have I lost this team? Have I lost the locker room?
That's fair, Gary, but he just, honestly speaking, in my opinion, I don't really think he had a great team this year. And the thing is here, and you're from here, Gary, you're in Kentucky now, but you know what it's like around here. Mm-hmm. They want it like yesterday. They want a winner. And it's a hotbed around here for basketball. And he lost to George Mason, which it happens, but nobody wants to hear about that. Just like last night, Florida lost to Texas Southern. It happens, but nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody cares. And for me,
they're calling for firing Mike White down in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that people don't realize now, the playing field is really getting more balanced because the one and done kids are still kids, and you're playing some of these other schools that have 3rd and 4th year players that are men
and transfers.
Yeah, and
plenty of transfers.
Yeah, and it's different. And like I said, I really think Mark Turgeon is a nice guy. I feel bad from my standpoint because I am a Gary Williams guy and I'm a lefty guy. And his name ain't Lefty and his name ain't Gary. So I really wasn't caught up into Maryland basketball. And it's not fair to him, but like I said, I'm Gary and I'm Lefty. That's what I know. That's what I grew up on. And that's what I enjoy. And saying that is also saying this area is very impatient. They want winners. They want it every night, every day. They want to be consistent winners. And it's more so with basketball than it is football. And he had some good seasons, but he never put together continuity to do it every year. It never happened like that. And like I said, I feel bad for him because from what I've been told, he is one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. He's a really good guy. And I think he's a good coach. I just think he's in a rough area. And this area is a hotbed. And you didn't get all the recruits, and like I said, you lose to George Mason, that's a problem, and it's a rough situation, Gary. It's a rough situation for him, and I wish him nothing but the best. I hope it works out for him. I think in 2 or 3 years he'll pop up somewhere else.
Yeah, I think so too. And to his credit, I think he probably realized I probably have gone as far as I can with this program and particularly with this team. I don't think he saw any kind of super recruit out there, either in his backyard or elsewhere, that's going to come to Maryland. And I think, he's a man that recognizes limitations and stepped out. As shocking as that is, that might have been the quote unquote noble thing to do. Now it's up to Danny Manning to try to salvage what's left of the season, which of course there's a lot of season left to be salvaged, but he's got to win. He's got to come up with a strategy, because remember, his little thing kind of, what is that word? Disintegrated or deteriorated at Wake Forest, which I didn't even know he was on that staff until, everything happened. But now he's got to prove he can coach, because again, I think it would behoove Maryland to probably give him a shot at the permanent job and everything. But now, this is a job tryout for him. This is a do-over for him. And, and he's got to show for all that experience, all that college success and NBA experience, that he can turn that into coaching. He had a chance at Wake Forest, didn't work out, but now he's got a second chance.
Well, yeah. He did. I think he started at Tulsa, did really well at Tulsa. Then he went to Wake Forest and he struggled there. That didn't really go well. We'll see what happens now at Maryland. It's going to be rough. It's just, it's not a stacked team. It's a lot of work that these kids are going to have to do every night to play. They're going to have to dig in deep and find a way. And you're already starting to hear people's names. I don't know. You hear Nate Oates from Alabama. You hear his name mentioned. You hear Andy Enfield's name mentioned from USC. My goodness, the other day, I even heard Rick Pitino's name mentioned. What is he now, 105? And he still can coach. He's still a great coach. Pitino's one of the best and will always be one of the best. But who knows? See, the thing is, Gary, Maryland wants filet mignon. Maryland wants caviar. But Maryland has in their pocket the money for hot dogs and beans. So are you going
to disagree? I would disagree with you on that, because remember, that's the reason why they went to the Big Ten, for the money. There is money.
They're broke. They're already saying they're broke, Gary.
Well, it's because nobody's going to the games, but nobody's going to the games anywhere. No, seriously. Nobody is going to the games anywhere, partly because of COVID and partly because games are, colleges are pricing themselves out for most people, especially when you're in a recession or whatever they want to call it, in a pandemic. But to hear that, that's news to me. But I think you put a product out on the floor, those donors are going to, put a little bit more faith in the program. We got to wrap it up.
But let me ask you, Gary, this. Will the donors put the money up a high dollar amount to get somebody like an Enfield or Nate Oates? Are they going to do that?
If it's not Nate Oates, I don't know if they will. Nate Oates, John, I tell you, believe it or not, I've heard that name so much around Lexington the last week, especially, since they pulled off a couple of big wins last week as well. Everybody thinks that he's probably, whenever Calipari leaves, that he is the guy. And if Alabama wins the SEC again, that's, who knows? He can write his own ticket anywhere he wants to go. He is a very good coach. And remember, it wasn't too long ago, this guy was like teaching high school.
Yeah. And they just knocked off Gonzaga last week.
Yeah, Gonzaga. That's why I was trying to remember. But, that's a conversation for another time about Gonzaga. But again, it's a long season. Hey, folks, we really appreciate you watching this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family and everything. Hey, we're here every week. We've always got plenty to talk about because sports gives us such a smorgasbord of subjects to discuss. We thank you for tuning in. John, I look forward to talking with you again next week. And John Pitt, I thank you for all that you've done.
Hey, Gary, thank you. And I want to also say before we get out of here, a special shout out to Archbishop Carroll Lions. They won the state championship last week in football. shout out and congratulations to him in high school football. Great job by Archbishop Carroll.
A state championship?
Yes, Washington, D.C. now has a state championship. I'll explain it to you off the air, Gary, how a town that's not a state has a state championship. But anyway, on another note, just thank you all for watching the show. Thank you all for being there. Enjoy sports again this week. Have fun, and we're going to see you again next week. Take care.